Hello and welcome to World Talks on TVP World with me, Ashim Kumar. The EU-Mercosur free trade agreement, signed after 25 years of negotiations, promises to create the world's largest trade zone, lowering tariffs and opening markets for both regions. While industry sectors may gain, European farmers worry about competition from Mercosur imports, particularly poultry and beef, under different environmental and chemical regulations. With ratification pending, questions remain about the fairness of the rules, the adequacy of quotas, and the balance between boosting industry versus protecting European agriculture and compliance with WTO standards. Joined by Professor Piech from the University of Łazarski. Welcome, Professor. Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Thank you.
A pleasure. So, why has it taken 25 years, Professor, for this to happen? And why has it happened now?
The process was very long because of the tensions, of course. First, the European Union was more had to intensify more on its own integration, economic integration, because the economic and monetary union has to be first created, then the enlargement. And after that, there was some space for further economic integration with other countries. And you asked why now? Because of the U.S. policy. If we see what Donald Trump administration is doing in terms of tariffs, it means for Europe that we need some other ways of stabilizing European economy if we are, let's say, exposed to the threats that are caused by the United States. So one of the ways to ensure some stability for European economy is to look for other markets, like, for instance, South American markets here. That's why it was intensified during recent months. The process of negotiations has been intensified, and now finally we have some conclusions, although still with some tensions, because it is not the overall agreement that all the EU countries has agreed to this conclusions, to these solutions.
Yes, I want to come to that in just a second. But before we do, on balance, who do you think out of the two blocs, which of the two blocs is going to do better from this deal, both now and in the future? I mean, I understand there's likely to be an evolutionary process, but overall, who's going to do better?
And for me, as economist and scientist, it was difficult to find the reliable information. I was so much surprised when I found only one very good source of information from Ireland. If we speak about national reports, now we could see only the estimations of the results for the whole European Union without dividing it to national, to countries and to sectors. And so trying to economic, scientific terms, it's difficult to judge. So from this point of view, I may base on my kind of experience and intuition. And I would say that although the impact on EU will be quite limited, because it is estimated that the GDP will grow only by 0.1%, the EU GDP, but from new trade theory point of view, we would expect that European Union would be rather more beneficial. Why? Because the Mercosur countries will mostly export to EU the agricultural products. So the margin, the profits on them are quite limited compared to the materials, or actually the product that will be exported from the EU to Mercosur countries, which will be rather more technologically advanced. So if we compare very, very globally these two groups of goods, rather raw material and some primary goods exported from Mercosur to EU, and from EU export more technological advanced goods. So it means that even if the balance of the trade will be more or less equal, European Union will profit more from that because it is more technologically advanced.
Understood. Now, you mentioned agricultural goods, and farmers have been protesting across the EU against signing this. What are the reasons behind the farmers' protests, and are those reasons justified?
To some extent, of course. Also in Poland, we are very interested in that, and French farmers also have been against this agreement. Because of the competition, of course, the labor costs, the cost of production of agricultural products in Mercosur countries are lower. So that means that there will be the competitors for the European farmers. However, it was limited to some extent because of the quotas that has been introduced, and because of the mechanism of monitoring the market, the results of the policies that will be introduced. So if in case of larger tensions and problems caused by to European farmers, then the quotas can be, let's say, narrowed, and the import could be limited, imports from Mercosur. So there are some mechanisms that can control the negative impact of EU on EU agriculture. However, of course, we must understand that the tensions remains. Why? Also because there is not enough research on that, and the policy, the information policy, the communication policy, both from the European Commission and national countries, national governments, this communication policy concerning the results, supported by the real data, economic analysis, macroeconomic forecast, this communication is very limited.
Understood. Now, the EU has also made a subsidy available to European farmers of 45 billion euros. Surely that should calm down their fears, shouldn't it?
Yes, of course, to some extent, because this is the policy that has been introduced by EU for decades already, in order to avoid problems with farmers, also political problems, because farmers have the power to influence on governments during political elections. So farmers in Europe are very subsidized. So agriculture policy is very, let's say, expensive for the European Union. And so if the free market have been introduced in Europe, then farmers would have a lot of problems. So for many years there is a big protectionism in Europe, and in this situation as well we'll see more protectionism from the point of view of subsidies, of course. So farmers could profit on that additionally.
So is it fair to say, Professor, that countries with large manufacturing bases, such as Germany, would benefit more greatly in terms of value than countries with large agricultural sectors in the EU?
Yes, so it means also for Poland that we could have some temporary problems unless our economy could shift rather to more value-added products. We should, and that's the challenge for the whole economy for many years. We should produce more high-tech than agricultural products, and maybe we'll do so in the future.
Now, Poland was one of the countries, France, you've already mentioned, Austria, Ireland, all of these countries were against signing the deal. Can these countries stop the ratification of the agreement?
They are not enough, although they are looking for other solutions like using the legal path. However, you didn't mention also Ireland. Ireland was one of the countries that had produced the report showing the economic consequences of the agreement, and it shows. I have read this report today. This report has proven that the Mercosur agreement would be profitable for the Irish economy. The results won't be very, let's say, high. The profits won't be very high, but anyway, the GDP should increase. So again, in a public debate, we rather look for kind of misinformation and lack of enough information from both the European Commission and governments, and that's why we have so many problems and tensions accompanied also by the protests of farmers, which are quite natural in this situation.
Understood. Now, zooming out a little bit and looking at the macroeconomic situation as a result of this deal, how does this influence the South American countries' position in world trade?
The exports from Mercosur countries should increase, not very much, but anyway, even by several percent, as it was estimated from 12 even to 17% that of our exports could increase. However, I would say this still will be rather low technologically advanced exports. So it won't make any larger impact on the Mercosur economies from the point of view of higher economic growth, because the whole battle is not about the primary commodities or agricultural products. The markets that matter are technologically advanced markets. And here we would see that that policy, that agreement could help also European car manufacturers to export to Mercosur countries, and from this point of view, Polish companies could profit from that, because we also support. We are linked to the German economy in the car manufacturing sector. So some of the sectors could be to some extent threatened, but others could benefit from that agreement.
Yes, but one can envisage, can one not, technology transfers from Europe to South America, thereby raising the technical skills and abilities of the South American countries. Can you imagine those countries thereby becoming hubs of technology themselves?
I don't think so. Of course, there are some trials, like, for instance, China has built a car factory, but it is rather to assemble the parts that are imported from China. So the impact on technological advancement, making Mercosur countries a hub for technologies, I don't think it will happen. I would rather suggest another, let's say, conclusion or result for this agreement, that these four countries, Mercosur countries, will rather be more likely become still the exporter of primary goods rather than high-tech goods. So I would rather say that this agreement will not be very helpful for Mercosur countries if they will intensify their agricultural production only or mostly. So,
okay, Professor Piech, unfortunately, we've got to end it there, but thank you so much for sharing your analysis with our audience. Have a good evening, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me again. Bye-bye.
And that brings us to the end of this episode of World Talks. Don't go away. World News coming right up.